in his initial teaching about the Eightfold Path. The whole point of this path is to uproot greed, hatred, delusion, the three what's called unwholesome roots. And at the very beginning of the path, we have just a glimmer of non-delusion, enough to bring us to practice. This is the first actual step on the Eightfold Path, right view. And this is one of the first moments of understanding and uproot the power of delusion and to beginning to uproot it. Following close on, as you know, from right view, there's right intention. Before we get to any speech, action, or meditation practice. And right intention has three basic aspects, two of which are basically metta. First, there's the intention for renunciation, which I won't talk about, other than just basically letting go. There's so many levels of that. Close on its heels are the intentions for non-hatred, in other words, metta, and the intention for non-cruelty, which is karuna, compassion. And we talk about metta and karuna together because compassion is simply metta that goes directly towards suffering. So even before we begin to deal with our speech and action in the world in our meditation, we open to simple, friendly well-wishing, which is metta. May I be happy, may you be happy, without an agenda. And that aspect of metta that turns towards the suffering of others. And the beautiful thing about the Eightfold Path is when we walk it, it feeds itself. It's a feedback loop, a positive feedback loop. This leads us to our speech and action in the world, the next steps of the path, and then to practice. Right concentration, right mindfulness. Mindfulness practice has become such a big thing in our culture, but it's just one aspect of a very strongly integrated path that leads to wisdom. And mindfulness is only one factor that we use to guide the mind to wisdom. And everything has to be in balance. But it all begins, it all begins with kindness towards ourselves and each other, compassion. And I love this because it's no matter where on the Eightfold Path you start, it brings everything else along. It requires all of it. It requires the cultivation of wisdom, requires the cultivation of ethical conduct. It requires the cultivation of non-harming. I've been reading a really interesting book about the science of hatred. Basically about the psychology of hatred, because I find it quite fascinating. Why some people faced with upbringing and challenges of life turn to extreme forms of hatred, and others do not, even with the same circumstances. And I was really struck. It was yesterday, actually. I was so struck because somebody had done an experiment with a group of college kids, separating them into experimental group, control group, as one does as a scientist, and further dividing them into political beliefs, whether they were right-wing or left-wing, and cleverly managing to fool the subjects to think that they were engaging in an experiment about politics, but it was nothing of the sort. It was to see if there was a relationship between contemplating one's death and cruelty. And they found, regardless of political affiliation, if people had been asked to contemplate death, their own death, they acted towards others in a more cruel way than the control group. Now, what does this have to do with metta? Well, what struck me was we as Buddhists contemplate death all the time, to turn the mind to compassion, to turn the mind to wisdom, rather than to hatred and to cruelty. And that, for me, really shone a light on how incredibly radical this path is. Rather than continuing to cultivate over and over and over again our habits that come from conditioning and karma of greed, hatred, and delusion, we step off that wheel and go in the complete opposite direction. So that when we cultivate death, when we cultivate suffering, we don't drown in it, but move toward it and use it in the service of wisdom and compassion. And why metta is so important in this, as a very beginning, is if we don't have this friendly well-wishing, we don't have this basic kindness, it's all too easy to drown in the challenges of the path and the challenges of life. I think of metta as kind of the life preserver. It keeps us afloat when things are really, really difficult in life and in the practice. And there are times when all we can do is say, well, this is interesting. May I be well, happy, and peaceful anyway. And life is getting increasingly interesting, isn't it? I mean, whoa. So we want to cultivate kindness. We want to cultivate the opposite of hatred. It requires courage. It requires a friendly and really radical acceptance of the messiness of life. When I first began to cultivate loving kindness intensively, I hated it. I think I've said this maybe last time. I really did. I thought it was stupid. I didn't understand how central it was to the path, how important it was to the path. But I thought it was brainwashing or an overlay of something, was artificial. But it's quite the opposite. The nature of the mind that is free of greed, hatred, and aversion is pure metta and wisdom and compassion. So it's where we start the path, and it's the result of the path. That's that feedback aspect. And so when we use a formal metta practice to train the mind to have this habit of going in that direction, we're feeding that positive practice of inclining away from greed, hatred, and delusion again and again and again and again. It strengthens that second limb of the Eightfold Path. And we develop a very strong habit of going there as a default. You know, it's what happens when we turn our system on in the morning, as opposed to going to irritation, going to cruelty. And it's very powerful. It's a very simple practice. But it inclines us over and over to the pure nature of mind, as opposed to the side of us that is colored and influenced by greed, by aversion, by delusion. And it directly supports insight, because it's the only way we can see through the way things are. This is the courage and strength of metta. So I really encourage you all to play with it. Not as a kind of a we do this, it's this American thing that came from, you know, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. We work very hard at practice. But to play with this practice, to explore this practice with a curious heart. See where it takes you. Without an agenda. It's one of the most wonderful things about metta practice, because it's not about some result. It's not about getting somewhere. You know, not about attaining nibbana. It's just about inclining the heart over and over and over again. So each moment of re-inclination is the whole point of the practice. That's all we need to do. And so finding ways to weave this into our lives and into our formal practice is actually a lot of fun. And it's what supercharges the Eightfold Path and this positive feedback loop that it is. So not only in our formal practice, but in, you know, right speech, right action, right livelihood. How do we bring metta into that? Oh gosh, it's so simple. Just moment to moment. Smile at the bus driver as you get on the bus. Radiate metta as you're standing in the queue at the grocery store. Or standing in an elevator. Yeah, exactly. Find a way to weave it into your life. And U Pandita was my preceptor, was he would have been a mathematician had he not been a monk, I think. He used to talk a lot about numbers, add things up. And I didn't get this from him, but I got this tendency from him to think in that way. And I often think about the power of metta and in our daily life, in the sense of, you know, 1 second of metta, you do it 60 times, that's a minute. You do that 60 times, it's an hour. That's an hour of practice. And you don't have to be sitting on a cushion. Could be washing dishes, walking down the street, driving your car. And it counts. It counts just as much as formal practice. Probably more, because it's woven into everything. And because of that feedback and the strength of right intention, that second limb of the Eightfold Path, the more you do it, the more you can do it. And the practice picks up momentum. So play with it. Have some fun with it. See where you can kind of find it in your daily life. And I know from my own experience, and I'm sure I'm not alone, you will be surprised that in the places where it's already there. So, yeah, just a word of encouragement. And each moment of metta is a moment where we, in our own realm, in our own lives, I think of us as the, the resistance I teach a lot in Holland and Belgium, and the resistance in World War II was very strong in both of those countries. So I think of this in terms of the resistance. We're the resistance against this stream of hatred. And we look normal. Well, you guys look normal. I don't. But, you look normal. But you can be doing something quite different. And it affects the whole world. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'd like to pause my own words now and hear some of your wisdom and some of your reflections about this before we take a little break and have a little more time for practice. So if anybody has any questions or comments or anything, please feel free. Yes, please, Al.
Yeah, thank you, Ayya. It's a pleasure to be with you. In your question, you talked about our practice of metta getting supercharged, if we weave it into our lives. So my question is, what would be our embodied experience when metta gets supercharged and when metta is constantly flowing within us?
It's a really good question. It can be many things. It can feel completely normal, unspecial. No, it's just an openness of heart and a willingness to be with what is without a reaction of aversion and ill will. So it could just be this balance of, wow, that person's really charged up. May they be happy. For example, we might be driving down the road. Somebody cuts right in front of us. How it manifests, how we experience that supercharging of metta is like this spontaneous and very strong moment of, whoa, may you be safe. As opposed to, any of the other things that might happen. Yeah. Or it could be quite a strong embodied experience. But when metta is most powerful, my teacher in Burma, U Indica, calls it metta air conditioning. Because it's very chilled out. It doesn't come with a strong emotional signature. It doesn't come with the heat of aversion, primarily. So when it's strongest, actually we feel it the least. Yeah, we don't feel it as an emotion or anything in the body. It's just this porousness of heart, this openness of heart, this coolness of mind that doesn't react in a unkind way. And we don't have to like whoever it is or whatever it is. A simple example, I'm here in Hawaii, and here we have very large spiders that like to live in houses. They're big. And they're kind of creepy because they're giant jumping spiders, actually. And so they can be hanging out on your wall, and then you turn away and turn back and they're gone. You don't know where they've gone. I grew up here and I was terrified of them as a child and into my adulthood until I began to practice, and then that phobia went away. And I inhabit this small space. It's a yurt, as you can tell. And there's a very large spider in here somewhere. I don't always see her. But she's around, and she comes out at night, and she's big. Supercharged metta for me is looking at her and talking to her like a friend. It's like, I'd really appreciate it if you stayed over there because I don't want to step on you. And that's really heartfelt. It's like, may you be safe from my big feet. That's strong metta too. Yeah. But, I'm not, best friends with her. But there's a strong well-wishing. Yeah, thank you, Al. Pamela, hi.
Hello, thank you. I've had an interesting experience that as you talked, I started feeling like it was some of what you were talking about. My husband has Alzheimer's, and when I realized that I was going to be his caregiver, and I have always been very independent and able to travel independently. He and I both traveled independently, and I knew I was going to be here, and my life was going to be very, very different than it was.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my Lordy, I am going to be so resentful. This is not going to go well. This is going to be hard. And I really projected that inside myself, and it hasn't been at all. And I thought, I had nothing but gentle feelings for him, and may he be as well as he can be. So that's kind of the background out of which I was working. And after I heard your last recording of the last time you were there, and Kendall or somebody posted the link, and so I was listening and decided to start practicing metta as part of my daily practice, to start with myself and then to expand. And I thought, well, I'll just do it as it feels right. And I felt stuck. It felt for a long time like I needed to just do it for myself. I needed a lot of metta for myself. But every time I would start thinking about him, it was like I was bored. It was like it's almost like I didn't need to worry about him. And I'm just curious about, is there some kind of, and maybe this relates to you as well, Al, is there some sort of, does it go where it's needed, is what it felt like. Like it was coming to me because I needed it right then. And I give it to him every day. And so it was less needed. Anyway, I'd love for you to comment about that.
Metta doesn't have agency. It's not a separate being who can, discern, oh, I need to go here and I need to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Metta comes from our own hearts, our own minds. And we have our own intrinsic wisdom that knows what we need in the moment often. We don't always listen to that. We may not even be aware of it. But if there's no greed, aversion, or delusion, there's discernment. We know what's necessary in the moment. Mm-hmm. And so in that space of cultivating kindness and really being connected with it, it clears away a lot. It's like, and we know, oh, I need to do that. That's okay. He'll be fine. I need to radiate metta for myself. So yeah, there is a wisdom that arises when we do loving kindness practice and we're really connected with it. A discernment that arises. When we cultivate any purely wholesome mind state, it brings along a lot of other wholesome mind states with it, wisdom being one of them. So it's a really common experience of people when cultivating loving kindness, wisdom arises, discernment arises. Or while cultivating wisdom, cultivating vipassanā, and really clearly, deeply seeing, oh, wow, all conditioned things really are impermanent, then metta spontaneously arises. So these two are so deeply connected that yes, what you're experiencing is normal and it's pretty universal. So what I would say in that situation, when that desire to cultivate metta for a certain being or for yourself is not a manifestation of, oh, sometimes it can be restlessness. We want to cultivate metta for somebody and the mind keeps jumping all over like a flea. That's different. But if we have a very strong sense of, no, you know what, today I need to cultivate metta for myself. Trust that. And it's a very flexible practice. And you don't have to go in any particular sequence when you're cultivating metta for the sake of the metta, as opposed to for the sake of concentration.
Right.
So feel free to, that's why I say play with it. And allow yourself to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela. So if there are any other questions, maybe one more question.
I'm sorry. I actually came into this session tonight a little bit late. I don't know what I missed, but what I'm getting right now is what's unfolding in my practice. I work primarily in, many communities, but a primary intentional community I work in is with the brain injured people. We have a bakery a nonprofit bakery for brain injured individuals and others. But what I want to say right now is that the practice of metta is showing up as a bridge between me and every other person I meet in life, both in brain injury and other places. But it's a bridge to each person. And then it shows up absolutely allowing and embracing the person I'm with, no matter what point of view they have. And I love that. It's just a treasure. It's like, wow, there's so many cool people here. And it's just a joy to connect. And metta is my bridge into that. And I'm just savoring that and really appreciating and excited for what is here now. And I love being with you all tonight. It's like I have a bridge with each person here through metta.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Had. I couldn't say it any better. Exactly. And Dave.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Let me get rid of the hand. Actually, I just want to thank you. You have come along karmically, serendipitously, I don't know, at a particular point in my life and my practice. And as I mentioned earlier, I listened to the recording of your first session. Delighted to know that there have been additional sessions. I didn't even know that I thought that was just a one-off. But your very candid description of the evolution of your relationship to metta, and I really resonate with that. Some people here have heard this before, and I apologize, but my first big retreat was 2015. I was, and I guess still am, a mess, but there was someone in the group who has stuck with me, and she described her internal life, which resonated very much with my internal life, which was totally a mess. And she said that she did nothing but metta for 2 years and really got things turned around for herself. And I've struggled with that for 7 years now. And your description of your relationship to metta, how I've evolved in my practice and approaching my own defilements. The metta, I've done nothing but metta since I first listened to your session 3-4 weeks ago. And it's been quite remarkable. I've always had a difficult time relating to the Buddhist teachings because they're so dry, didactic, intellectual. And when I turn inside, it looks nothing like that. And it's hard for me to say, well, there's this 8 lists and this 6 lists and all of this, and okay, where is that in here? But what I've been able to do is, with the complex PTSD that's going on, chronic childhood trauma, just whatever. There's what I call this continental rift of magma, of exploding, angry, sarcastic, critical, rageful, the road rage that you talk. I mean, it pops up. It's not me. It's just there, and I have struggled and fought and all of that, and at some insightful point realized that for me to fight that is me fighting myself, and I will win. There are 2 me's fighting each other, and I will win. And it was a very painful discovery. And I've tried to turn around my relationship to that, and metta has made that happen. It's totally a work in process. I am living with the notion of practice, like a musical instrument or whatever thing I happen to be working with. I take in mind the woman from 7 years ago who said that she did it for 2 years. But I've had some tremendous success just in waking up in the morning, coming out of that unconscious that wants to destroy me, and sitting up just starting metta. And
beautiful.
I even walked my day with this sing-song, may I be happy, and when I start to get a little sarcastic about that, I turn metta to the sarcasm. When I start to feel, this metta, then I turn metta to that. And what it does is it snips the Velcro. So the stuff is out there, and then it floats off, and I'm at least able to function and, peace, more peace. Let's put it that way. But I just want to thank you. You really, I've met you at when I was ready. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Dave. It's just such a beautiful example of that feedback, the way metta feeds itself, and how we have a choice of what we cultivate and what we don't. That's the essence of all the didactic stuff. It's just different ways of explaining the practice, and different lenses through which to see the process. Ultimately, all we're doing is creating a habit of kindness and awareness.
And a key part of that is recognizing that what is coming up is not true. It may be real, but it's not true. If I'm feeling hopeless or suicidal or whatever, that's there. It's not true. And so that gives me the space to turn metta to it. and
Right.
just sit with it, and then it passes.
Exactly. Exactly. And I tend to think of it as an embrace of everything and an acceptance of everything. Now, we don't have to feed that if it's not wholesome, but to hold that with kindness allows it to come and go in its own time. That's its business. It's like, oh yeah, you too. May I be happy. And we don't have to believe the negativity that is a habit. It's a very deeply entrenched habit for a lot of us.
The discovery I had along with the line of the guy that passes you on the road and cuts you off was, I can have metta for him, but first I have to have metta for me, for the anger and rage that comes up, because that's in me.
And
That's
the fear that's under all that anger and rage.
Absolutely.
Of course. And that's your default. If you have that as a basis, as a foundation, and the metta looks like, oh, this is hard. Maybe it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's not always easy. But it's deeply, deeply rewarding because it opens us up to the totality of who we are and gives us the space to feed the wholesome part of that, to go always towards the wholesome, towards kindness, towards wisdom and compassion. And I tend to think of those stories as just voices, that kind of quack up here, quack, 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 quack. And you can, I joke with it. It's like, oh, thank you for sharing. That was nice. I've heard that before somewhere. If it's some story I've heard a million times, it's like, oh yeah, didn't somebody tell me that before? Thank you for sharing. I'm going to do metta for, but you can come over here and, and it gives a kind of a sweetness to the attitude of everything. So Ellen, you briefly had your hand up.
I guess I need to unmute myself. I wanted to thank you also. I've been on this path for a long time, and I don't think I have ever held metta in a right understanding. I didn't realize the centrality of metta to the practice. I thought it was something else that you did, another add-on. And I have thought it was stupid and artificial. I quit thinking it was stupid because I experienced the way it was inclining my mind and heart. So I thought, well, it does that. That's good. But it has always seemed artificial. And I'm just so grateful for what you've shared. And I have to say that everyone here who has shared what they've shared has been so valuable to me. And I relate so much to it. And I just have such a much greater clarity about metta, and it will influence my enthusiasm to practice it, I'm sure. So thank you for that. And
thank you, Ellen, and thank you for your practice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all for your practice. Well, we have a little bit of time to do some practice now. But first, let's take a 5-minute break because we've all been sitting for a while. Coming back at about 5 minutes after the hour, whatever hour it happens to be for you. Yeah, thank you. This is the foundation of all of the other categories in the formal opening to the metta in the practice. And one thing to be very clear about before we sit, this doesn't mean you have to love yourself or even like yourself. Metta is simply well-wishing. It's that heartfelt wish, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe and protective. These simple things we all want. It's the specific cultivation of that well-wishing, often in the face of what we don't want or don't like. So if you hit a wall with yourself of self-judgment, self-hatred, frustration, doubt, there's one word that I would suggest you add. Your regular metta phrase, and I use a very short, simple one. May I be well, happy, and peaceful is what I tend to use, because it covers all the ground. And then at the end of the phrase, I say, anyway, or no matter what, depending. So may I be well, happy, and peaceful. Anyway. Even if there is this thing about the way I am, it's habitual and I don't like it, don't accept it, and don't want it. Well, may I be happy anyway. Because metta is not about the result. It's not demanding that we be happy. It's not overlaying fake happiness on something that isn't happy. It's accepting what is and still being able to really receive that with kindness and friendliness and to wish well anyway. So it's that movement of the mind to the well-wishing that is the metta. It has nothing to do with result, either for ourselves or for another person or the world. And this is why we repeat a phrase over and over and over again. It's the phrase that we use is a simple, it's like a leash on a puppy. We're training the puppy to come in the direction we want it to come. And we clip the leash on so that we have a little bit of direction. It's like, no, come over here, over here, this way, look over here. Good dog. That's what I think of sometimes, training the mind. It's like training a puppy. Watch, watch, watch. Oh, good dog. You know, you can even use that stupid voice you use when you train a puppy. So we use the phrase as a way to direct the mind to the metta, a way to express this well-wishing. Use your own language. All of us maybe were born and raised with English, except maybe Al, I don't know, you might have another language that is your birth language, your mother tongue. So use that.
It's Hindi.
Find a phrase in your own. Oh, beautiful. Use Hindi. Use a phrase in Hindi that's short and it really feels like it connects. So before we start to practice, and this will be a very short sit, but before we start to practice, here are a few examples. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. Or may I be safe and protected from harm. Or may I be peaceful and at ease. May I be content with the conditions of my life. May I be healthy and strong. Any phrase that resonates for you. And for the duration of the sitting, stay with that one phrase. And all we do is we connect with the heart, we silently repeat the phrase, connect with the meaning, and then just let that resonate. And then do it again and again and again. And it's creating a habit of inclination to kindness and connection to well-wishing. So that said, let's actually do the practice. Please make yourself really comfortable.
I can ring a bell here. And then I'll ring it again, and if we can stay a little
Thank
longer.
you, Candle.
And if we can stay a
Yeah, if
little.
you could ring it at the end of the sitting, so about 5 minutes before we finish.
There you go.
Sitting in a way that's comfortable, where you can be completely at ease physically. There's no particular way you need to sit in this practice. And if you experience strong pain, you can move. Don't feel you have to sit there like a statue. In the metta practice, it's fine to adjust the posture. Just let that be in the background. And resting back at the beginning in a simple sense of presence with the direct experience of this mind, of this body we call me, I, mine, right now. Bringing to that awareness a kind, curious, friendly acceptance. No matter what is predominant in your experience, just know that as it is. Holding yourself in presence, very simply. Not needing to do anything, just be for a few minutes. And if you find it easy to connect with the movement of the breath around the chest, near the heart, you can rest the attention there. Just let life flow through you and know that. Beginning the metta practice by connecting with the heart center, the area around the chest. You can put your hand there if it helps you connect with that sensation, that area of the body. And think of this practice as cultivation, growing a garden of kindness. Each phrase being a seed we plant in the heart. So connect with the heart and begin this cultivation by silently repeating the phrase that you've chosen for yourself. And really just know what you're saying. Connect with the meaning of the phrase. It's not just words, there's an actual intention there. Connect with that. Breathe into that. And let it resonate. Again, connect with the heart. Repeat your phrase. Planting another seed. Feeling that. moment to moment to moment. Just planting one seed after another. Finding a comfortable pace for yourself where you can connect with the meaning of what you're saying. Not too fast. Doesn't matter how often you say it. And giving yourself the time to just let it rest for a moment after you've repeated the phrase. Let it resonate. Before again connecting with the heart and planting another seed, repeating the phrase again and again and again. Your phrase, whatever that is. Whatever you feel is fine. Whatever the strength of the connection is fine. It's the inclination over and over and over again that does the work of this practice. So just keep connecting with the heart. Breathe into that space with your phrase. Know what you're wishing for yourself. Letting that wish settle for a moment. Moment to moment to moment. Planting seeds. And watering those seeds with the continuity of this inclination. One moment after another, after another. And of course, if you lose the thread of the practice, this is normal, it happens. Just begin again. It's no big deal. Starting over as many times as you need to. continuing the practice, even though the bell has rung and we do something differently. See how long you can keep inclining to kindness. Maybe without the phrases, but just abiding in kindness and bringing yourself back there again and again and again. Thank you, everybody, for being the resistance to hatred, the secret army.
Thank you so much, Ayya. Such a pleasure to have you here. I'm trying not to have sadness and disappointment that we won't get you quite so regularly, but I have faith that we will connect again on some other time. In Europe, the time is a lot different, so we might just pick a different day or a different time of day. But thank you so much, and I just want to remind everyone that the practice is priceless, the teachings are priceless, and that Ayya comes to us at request, and any donations of dana for showing your generosity that can bring happiness to us, to ourselves, and happiness to you, Ayya, for continuing to disseminate the teachings all around the world. That over in the chat, I have put a direct link for our first and third Sundays at PIMC, and also a suggestion that if you want to give dana to Ayya Virāñāni, you can go to PayPal and look up my name, candlemaui@gmail.com, and deposit directly there. And then I can see that she gets it. I can also put in here, if you want to try to download it, it's just a picture of my QRL on PayPal. And also I'll print my address in here for anyone. I'm going to talk and type at the same time. Let's make sure I got it right. If anybody wants to send a check, you can send it to me, write it to cash or to me, and I will get it to Virāñāni. B, Portland, Oregon 97215. Oh, I can't type and talk at the same time, so bear with me.
Well, as Candle is
There.
typing, I can fill in the space. Oh, there, she got it.
And I really
Thank you,
like
everybody.
reading this. And then I want us to close with the one of the chants, probably, I don't know which one. I think maybe Reflections on Universal Well-Being. That's a good one. But you know, I always like to read, well, you might not know, but I love this quote. There was a woman at the time of the Buddha by the name of Visakha, who the Buddha identified as his chief patroness. She said of her acts of generosity, "When I remember my acts of generosity, I shall be glad. When I am glad, I shall be happy. When my mind is happy, my body will be tranquil. When my body is tranquil, I shall feel pleasure. When I feel pleasure, my mind will become concentrated. That will bring about the development of the spiritual faculties, the spiritual powers, and the factors of enlightenment." So your generosity is the foundation of your own realization of the Buddha's teachings of peace. May we start with that generosity to ourselves and let it flow to others.
So let's close with the Reflections on Universal Well-Being.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen and blow it up a little bit, maybe, if I can get to the plus mark. There we go. Is that mostly
Perfect.
visible?
That's good.
Okay, do you want to do it and the rest of us will mute?
Yes, please. And if you know this and are muted, you can chant as loud as you like. Now let us chant the reflections on universal well-being. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained when they act upon intention. All beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts
Chin.
they will be the end.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.
May we be kind to ourselves and each other until we meet again. So happy to see everybody. Glad you stuck around. Ellen, Sherry, Dave, Mo, Rebecca,
Yeah, good
Doug,
night, Dave.
Cynthia,
It's late for you.
Libby, John, T, Sam, our warrior platypus, and Rocio. Thanks everybody for coming. Unmute and wave and all that. Let your voices be.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Kendall. Thank you, Ayya. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Dave.
Dave.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you,
Nice to
everybody.
see you.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ayya.
Bye.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you,
Bye,
all.
Hat.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing.
Bye, Sherry.
Bye, Had.
Bye, Sherry.
Bye, Had.
Bye, Kendall.
Bye, Had.
Love you,
Rocio,
Kendall.
wave so I can see you again.
Bye, Had.
Love you, Kendall.
Love you too, Sherry.
Bye, Pam.
Great to see old friends and new.
See you tomorrow morning, Pam.
Ayya and I are going to stay on, so you all have to keep going toward the end. Rocio, are you nearby? Rocio, are you nearby? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Anything we need to say? I could stop the recording.